we're going to be putting Midjourney version 5 and ChatGPT 4 together to harness the great powers that they contain. And we're going to be building better prompts and making the most of these new technologies. We can imagine ChatGPT 4 as a wise wizard who has trained for many years. We can go to the wise wizard and ask him to define us an articulate and specific prompt for different contexts.
Dear wizard, can you give me a prompt for a sweet lady protagonist for my film about cheese?
Of course, young Padawan. Just put 8K at the end.
To perform this process, we will train ChatGPT 4 in the art of prompt writing and help refine its outputs. After this, we'll look at how these prompts come out in Midjourney and look for ways to improve our prompt writing wizard. So let's dive right in. The first step is to come to ChatGPT, make sure we set the model to ChatGPT 4 and start a new conversation. And what we're going to do is we're going to prime ChatGPT 4 to act as our wizard prompt writer. And to do that, I'm going to inform it that you need to act as a prompt engineer. You will write me prompts for an AI art generator called Midjourney. I will provide you with short content ideas, and your job is to elaborate these into full, explicit, coherent prompts. So here I've defined the task, I've told it what it's going to act is, and now I'm giving it more context around what an AI art generator is, what a prompt is, and how I would like the response formatted. Prompts involve describing the content and style of images. It is useful to be explicit and use references to popular culture, artists, and mediums. Your focus needs to be on nouns and adjectives. This prevents ChatGPT from going off and describing in flowery ways the vacant gaze that somebody's having that reminds them of the first day of autumn. And we're asking ChatGPT to actually define what that would look like, that the eyes are focused on something in the distance rather than they have a vacant stare. I love to think of these prompts as casting spells into Midjourney, and with the right combination of words, we can elicit infinite possibilities. Wingardium Midjourneyiosa! I then go on to tell it I will give it some example prompts to use. Please define the exact camera that should be used. It's useful to get an exact camera lens if that is the medium you're using, because it helps define the precise aesthetic that we're looking for. I then gone on to say, here is a formula for you to use. Brackets, content, insert nouns here. Medium, insert artistic medium here. Style, insert references to genres, artists, and popular culture here. Lighting, reference the lighting here. Colors, reference the color styles and palettes here. Composition, reference the camera's specific lenses, shot types, and positional elements here. What I've done is broken the prompt down into specific variables so that we will make sure we get adjectives relating to these different component parts of an effective prompt. This will make sure that we have accurate defined language for the whole array of possibilities of our prompt. When giving a prompt, remove the brackets, speak in natural language, and be more specific. Use precise and articulate language. Always output me 2 full prompt options. This means that we'll get 2 options every time we ask for a prompt. So this can be great for simultaneously creating different images inside of Midjourney. And it also gives us a little bit more flexibility to either choose one or the other, or even combine parts of both into our own unique prompt. Finally, I've given it one example prompt to give it an idea of how I would like the output to be. To get the most out of ChatGPT, it's important to give it a lot of contextual information. ChatGPT 4 now takes up to 25,000 characters in contextual information. And this allows us to give it a lot more information, which it then can include in its own intelligence, allowing us to give it a lot of information and asking it to reflect and interpret that in original ways. An interesting use case that I recently saw was somebody took a new feature from a coding language and inputted the entire documentation into ChatGPT 4 and asked it to spit out a tutorial that was aimed at beginners. So we're taking really advanced, complex language and we're asking ChatGPT to output us a more accessible version of that information. So let's take a look at the content that we've got from ChatGPT for our first prompts. The first one is a tranquil underwater landscape medium oil painting style inspired by JMW Turner, the great Turner, and H.R. Geiger. So Turner was an English painter who specifically worked in oil paints and created very beautiful atmospheric seascapes. Now, the first thing I notice is that it still included the brackets. So I will retrain ChatGPT by asking it to rewrite the prompts without the brackets.
But brackets are the answer, young boy.
I know more than you, wizard! Okay, so this is looking much better. What we're going to do is we're going to copy this prompt and we're going to hop into Midjourney. We're going to make sure that we're using version 5 of the algorithm. Now we're going to type in /imagine, paste in our brand new prompt, and this is going to spit us out something quite remarkable. And simultaneously, we can come back and do the second idea as well. Now, these are just ideas we've asked from ChatGPT, but what we can also do is we can ask it to do something of our own volition. So I'm going to ask ChatGPT for a vintage travel poster of the Alps. Let's see how it gets on with this request. And we're going to hop back into Midjourney and see how it's getting on with our original requests. So the first prompt we put in was a tranquil underwater cityscape oil painting by JMW Turner with warm ethereal sunset lighting filtering through the water. The colors should be rich blues, teals, and warm oranges. Capture the scene with a wide-angle lens. And it's created a pretty interesting concept piece here. Let's upscale a couple of these. Wow, it's fantastic how it's got this juxtaposition between the underwater scene and the cityscape on top. And the second prompt I put in was a futuristic garden party with robots and people mingling. It's in the style of Alfonso Mucha, who was a very popular artist to imitate. He had an Art Deco style and created a number of stylistic advertisements in the early 20th century. Also, please forgive me on the pronunciation of his name. I believe I always butcher it, but for the record.
Alphonse Mucha.
Mucha. Alphonse Mucha is the British.
Alphonse Mucha.
And if you're interested in the American,
Alphonse Mucha.
Alphonse Mucha. Okay, enough of that tangent. Let's get back to our Alphonse Mucha robotic garden party and upscale a couple of these for a closer inspection. And you can see we've got this very distinctive, interesting concept of a robotic party in the style of Alphonse Mucha. I like it, but let's actually try the prompt that we've asked it for. So now we're going to look at our vintage travel posters. I'm also going to change the aspect ratio for this and make it vertical. So for that, I'll change it to --AR 2x3, which means that we're going to have a poster outputted. And for every 200 pixels of width, we're going to have 300 pixels of height. Now we're going to go again with the second option and try that again with a 2x3 ratio. In the meantime, we're going to whack another one inside of ChatGPT. This time we're going to go for street photography portraits in New York. Midjourney version 5 has really taken the levels and quality of AI art to new heights. And specifically, photorealism has increased immensely. The details on finer elements of human anatomy are now so precise that it's becoming harder and harder to distinguish between AI art and real photography. One thing that is rendered particularly well inside of Midjourney now is hair, strands of hair.
Wait till you get to my age and I'll show you the meaning of hair, boy!
Wow, and look at these beautiful vintage style posters that we've now gotten outside of Midjourney. Absolutely mesmerizing. These would work really well for home decor. If you're interested in a business idea, I can suggest creating very specific travel posters for different locations and opening an Etsy shop really targeted at a specific place that has a high number of rental properties, because Airbnb renters love to put specifically inspiring artworks that are relevant to a space on their walls. I think that is a great opportunity to monetize a piece of work like this. Wow, look at that one. I adore it. The colors and the composition are fantastic. And I really like the difference we've got between the two options, with the first being slightly more saturated with these brighter reds, and the second having a more nuanced approach with these more pastel colors. Now, you may have noticed that still the text is being rendered pretty horrendously inside of Midjourney, and this is something that hasn't been improved very much in version 5. One thing they did mention is that they are trying to remove unnecessary text where possible. And there is some notion of that happening, and there is less text appearing in a lot of places. But what we can always do is take an image like this and really help ourselves stand out by actually adding our own text. You can use a free tool like Figma to easily add our own text. You can paste an image in easily, and what we're going to do here is actually we're just going to crop the image by drawing a frame with the F key and pasting the image inside this frame. Then we're going to extend the image upwards to give us some room at the top to input our own text. We're going to put in our own writing. I'm going to try Chamonix here. Pick a suitable font. I'm going to choose Poppins this time. Whack the font size all the way up to 160. Change the font style to bold, and we're going to select a color from inside of the artwork. Make sure that we've got the whole word on one line, and I'll slightly increase the letter spacing. When you're using all caps, it's important to slightly increase the letter spacing. Gotta check my spelling of Chamonix there. And I am correct. Christ, being dyslexic sucks. Thank God for AI. But one should not blame all one's ills of poor spelling on dyslexia. You can quickly take an image and actually vastly improve the quality that you have by adding your own text. This is something that AI is massively struggling with still. And it's very interesting to see that it has overcome the issues with hands and guns, yet text is still something that it is suffering with. Another area that V5 is still not able to deal with is being able to create specific elements, remember them, and put them on future works. For example, you could create a character and then reuse the same character in future. The same goes with objects and locations. But that's something hopefully we'll see before too long. But here is my vintage travel style poster, generated with Midjourney and ChatGPT. But let's have a little look at how we're getting on with our street photography. Wow, these are beautiful, absolutely mesmerizing, really. But you can also give ChatGPT the opportunity to come up with its own ideas. So I've asked it to give me 5 varied ideas, include 2 that are photorealistic and 1 of a beautiful woman. And we'll take a look at the artwork that ChatGPT wanted to make. What does the AI desire? Hot air balloon scenes. Wow, wonderful French countryside. And for the beautiful woman, it has a Japanese woman in traditional attire. It's interesting that I would say perhaps there is an inbuilt bias there in ChatGPT to give us a very diverse output rather than a very perhaps narrow version of the most likely output. And then we have a wonderful street scene. So thank you, GPT, for your contribution to the art here. I love just scrolling through the Midjourney community feed and seeing what people come up with. And you would have to say that at least half of the images that are generated are based around attractive women. Which is great because I love attractive women. We can also ask ChatGPT for its opinion on why is the majority of art created based on attractive women. And ChatGPT has told us that the prevalence of attractive young women in AI-generated art can be attributed to several factors, reflecting both the biases within the AI itself and the preferences of the users. Should we address this? I don't think we should. I don't think there's an issue with people choosing to create beautiful women, but it is something that happens. If anything, it's very interesting for me that on one hand, I enjoy looking at attractive young women, but it seems almost fleetingly enjoyable. It is like watching pornography, that it is fun, but it's very hollow. I think there is more depth, more nuance, more beauty to be found in other places. Creativity comes from combining tools in original ways, and using the strengths of ChatGPT and Midjourney allows us to create advanced articulate prompts. Check out my AI courses in the description below, and make sure to watch this video next for more on the state of AI.